welcome back to my channel. Welcome to today's video. I am starting a new series. Welcome to Mom Talk. I have had this kind of on my heart for a little while now. I have just a lot of different topics that I'm really excited to cover. I would love if you guys had suggestions or thoughts of topics that you wanted me to cover. I am hoping that this video series will give me an opportunity to talk about all mom things and share my experiences and give people an opportunity to hear my experience and maybe relate. I feel like mom life can be so emotionally draining and exhausting, isolating and lonely, but there's so many of us in this season of life that we really shouldn't feel alone, and I'm hoping that this video series kind of helps other moms feel connected, I guess. Feel like we all have this similar, like we're all going through the similar stage of life. We all have these similar experiences. Obviously, we experience them a little bit differently, but I don't know. I would love to just create a community of moms who build up and support each other through the journey of motherhood, because let's be real, it's freaking hard. With all of that said, this is the first video in the Mom Talk series, and we are going to be talking postpartum. So I feel like the postpartum period was something that wasn't talked about a whole lot, and then social media has sort of blown it up, and now we talk about postpartum a lot. And I really think that is a good thing. I think it's a good thing because postpartum is hard. There is so much going on with your body, and it's almost like you think, or at least I thought, that the hard part was like the pregnancy and the delivery. And then once baby was here, everything was just golden and happy, and you're in like newborn bliss and you feel good and everything's great. But that couldn't be farther from the truth. The postpartum period, just right after you have a baby, it's hard. You are recovering from childbirth, whether it be a C-section or a vaginal delivery. You're exhausted, your hormones are going crazy, you're trying to bond with this baby. If you're anything like me, you are trying to please all of the people around you, everybody that wants to come see baby. You're trying to be in a place mentally and physically where you're okay with visitors. It's exhausting, the postpartum time right after giving birth. So I'm going to cover a couple different things about postpartum in this video. I'm going to cover the recovery right after giving birth, the differences between C-section recovery and vaginal recovery, because I did have both. I'm going to talk about my experience, sleep deprivation, the newborn stage, breastfeeding those first couple of weeks. I do plan to have a totally separate Mom Talk video covering all things regarding breastfeeding, but in today's video, I'm just going to cover the very beginnings of breastfeeding. We're going to talk about how your relationship with your partner changes postpartum. I'm also going to talk about sex. That's right. We're going to talk about sex in this video. That is something that I feel like is very important to cover after having a baby, whether it be a C-section or a vaginal delivery. Sex is something that eventually you do have again and you want to have again. And my tips for your first time having sex after having a baby. I'm gonna go ahead and jump in because I feel like I've done enough pre-talking and I have a lot of stuff I want to cover. So first and foremost, the recovery postpartum. So in my experience, I had a C-section delivery first, and I had a VBAC or a vaginal birth after cesarean for my second delivery. The recovery was very different for both of those. So my recovery with my C-section, I had a lot more incisional pain and soreness. I felt a lot more beat up, like just overall physically. My C-section was supposed to be a nice, safe, easy, planned delivery. My daughter had another idea in mind, and it ended up being an emergency C-section in the middle of the night. My body definitely went through some trauma with that delivery, and even though it was a C-section, I still labored and dilated to a 10 and was complete, so my body still kind of went through the whole process of labor. Then I ended up having a C-section anyways because my daughter was breached. Recovery was a lot more just incisional pain and discomfort. I just felt beat up all over, achy, just yucky. The following 2 or 3 days after my C-section, I had a lot of leg swelling, which I think is common just because they pump you full of fluids for your C-section. So I did have a lot of pitting edema on my legs and a lot of swelling on my lower extremities. My recovery from my VBAC was very different. I did not have any incisional pain and I didn't feel like achy. I mean, I was tired obviously because you're always tired right after having a baby because it's exhausting, but I didn't feel so achy and painful. I had pain, but really the only pain was just from down in that region where the baby comes out. I did have a 2nd degree tear, I believe. It did hurt to go to the bathroom. That was kind of the biggest thing. Peeing was just very painful. I did learn a couple tips and tricks. One was to spray some numbing stuff on before you pee. I leaned forward when I would pee to try to not let the pee hit the stitches because I think that's what makes it burn, or at least that's what I read on the internet. I used witch hazel pads in my underwear. Ice packs really helped with all the swelling. The biggest difference between the 2 recoveries was my vaginal delivery. I felt really good pretty much right away. The only time I really had pain or discomfort was when I was using the bathroom, and maybe for the first like 2 or 3 days when I would sit just because of all the swelling. But once the swelling went away, it was really just going pee with my stitches. That was the only thing that really was painful. Whereas with my C-section recovery, I was in quite a bit of pain for a couple of weeks just healing from that incision and that surgery, because really a C-section is a major abdominal surgery. It is a big freaking deal. So if you're watching this, I would be really interested in hearing about how you recovered from your vaginal or cesarean birth, or if you've had both, I'd be interested to know which one you thought was easier to heal from. I've talked to people who have had both and I've kind of got a mixed review. I feel like some people said that their C-section was so much easier to recover from. Then I've also talked to people who said their vaginal delivery was so much easier to recover from. Obviously, if you've only had one or the other, then that's your only experience, so it's hard to compare and contrast. But for me personally, a vaginal delivery was significantly easier to recover from, and I feel like I healed a lot faster with that than I did with my C-section. So next, I want to talk about that first couple of hours after you have a baby. Right after baby came out, both times I got to get some snuggles in, and then it was time to, at least for me, put baby to the boob. So not everybody chooses to breastfeed. Whether you choose to breastfeed or formula feed, you are doing what's best for your baby, and I hope you know that. You are a great mom, and you are doing exactly what your baby needs. I chose to breastfeed, so shortly after my babies were born, we put them to breast, and both of them actually latched on pretty well right away. That is not everybody's experience. Sometimes people have a terrible experience where baby doesn't latch, or baby has lip ties, tongue ties, whatever ties, all kinds of different issues with breastfeeding. I was very fortunate, and both of my babies latched in the hospital. With my first daughter, we ran into some issues with more of a shallow latch, and then I had a very strong letdown, which was difficult for her, especially when she was littler. So we kind of had to work through some of those issues. With my second baby, things were a little bit better, but I honestly believe things were only better and easier because I breastfed my first for 13 and a half months. So I feel like going into my second time breastfeeding, I knew what to do. The first time it was me and my baby learning together, and the second time I already knew what to do, so I was kind of coaching my baby. It just went a lot smoother. So there was that initial time right after baby was born. Like I said, got some cuddles in, did some breastfeeding, did some skin to skin. The first pregnancy was pre-COVID, so those 2 days that we were in the hospital after my C-section, we had a lot of family come in and meet the baby. My second baby was just a couple months ago in May, so we were in COVID times, which meant no visitors, and I will say it was kind of nice. That was one thing that I wasn't upset about, not having a bunch of visitors at the hospital after baby was born. It really just gave me and my husband an opportunity opportunity to really bond with our baby and kind of bond just the three of us, which was also really nice because we already had our other daughter at home. And so when we came home, like this time in the hospital with the three of us was like the only time that it was going to be just the three of us before we brought her home to her older sister. So it was really kind of nice to have that time with just her. Plus, my husband and I were able to get a little bit more rest before coming home, which was really nice. With my vaginal delivery, we only stayed in the hospital a little over 24 hours, whereas with my C-section, we were there for 2 days. So once we got home from the hospital, both times, the recovery process, like I already talked about, was a little bit different. Also, in terms of visitors at home, it was a little bit different both times as well. So with my first daughter, again, we had a lot more visitors in the hospital, and then when we came home, we had a lot more visitors that were coming into our home shortly after I had given birth. I actually had a little bit of a mental breakdown about maybe 2 or 3 weeks into being home after giving birth. I was still really struggling with breastfeeding, and I was still really hurting and just in a lot of pain, and I was just uncomfortable, and I just got exhausted with the number of visitors. I ended up just kind of breaking down, and my husband felt very bad. From there, we kind of cut the number of visitors and we weren't having as many people over. So my suggestion to all new moms, listen to your gut and listen to your heart, and if you feel overwhelmed by the number of people that are coming over to see your baby, you can say no. That was something that I, as a chronic people pleaser, really struggle with, is setting boundaries and saying no. So that kind of hurt my postpartum experience, especially the first time around, because I just really had a hard time telling people no. The second time around, we were still in COVID times, so things were a little bit different. We definitely didn't have as many visitors. Also, because it's your second child, I feel like people just don't come over as much. So I didn't really have to exercise saying no or practice saying no as often, but I definitely was more aware the second time around and did make more of an effort to, if I really didn't want people over, I really did not have people over. So about 3 months in with my first daughter, I was really struggling. Becoming a new mom, things were just tough. It was hard. It was hard emotionally, mentally, physically, just in every sense. I was just really struggling. And I think some of that was because like I said, I'm a chronic people pleaser. I have some anxiety when it comes to giving up control. So I was just really struggling. And my mom saw how much I was struggling, and she kind of reached out and she said, I'm worried about you. I think maybe you need to talk to somebody. Again, with my first daughter, my birth experience was a little bit traumatic. I didn't feel like I bonded with my baby right away, and then I just felt overwhelmed by the number of people coming over. I felt insecure about being a mom, and then again, I struggle with control, and you can't control a baby. They do their own thing. You have no control. That was really tough for me. So she reached out, and I ended up finding my therapist, who I still talk to now. That was life-changing. Having somebody to talk through all of my control issues and to talk through all of the things that were making motherhood a struggle for me, it was just so helpful. I 200% recommend that all new moms find somebody to talk to. It doesn't necessarily have to be a therapist, but I feel like it was really helpful having like an unbiased third party that could kind of help me work through some of my emotions and some of my feelings, because some of the things that I was worried about and some of the things that I was uncomfortable with, once I talked through them with my therapist, it really just helped me to relax a little bit as a mom. I mean, it's hard. Like I said, postpartum is freaking hard. Hormones are crazy. Being a mom is hard. Giving up control is hard. There's just so many different layers of hard when it comes to the postpartum period. I feel like I had some level of postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety, especially with my first. Having my therapist just really helped me just work through all of my emotions. Still talk to her today. I talked to her all through my second pregnancy and my delivery, and I'm now just over 5 months postpartum with my second baby, and I've got bi-monthly appointments where we sit and we chat, and it is the most helpful thing. It has really changed my perspective on so many things and allowed me to feel less anxious about things, and just overall, it's just, I don't know, it's been so helpful. And again, I'm going to throw another disclaimer in here. This is just my experience. I know that for some moms, they need more than just a therapist. For some moms in the postpartum period, their postpartum depression is really debilitating and they need medication, and that is okay. Being a mom is exhausting and challenging. There's so much adapting that takes place and changes that take place. Taking meds doesn't make you weak. It doesn't make you less than. Really and truly, you are doing the right thing for you, because in order to raise happy, healthy children, you need to take care of yourself also, because you matter. So for some moms, they do need medication, a combination of medication and therapy, and that's not wrong. I would love to hear other people's experiences. So I kind of covered the postpartum recovery period, the differences between the vaginal and the cesarean, my experience with postpartum anxiety and depression, a little bit of my breastfeeding journey, which again, I will touch more on in a different mom talk video. So now we're going to talk about sex, postpartum sex. So in my experience, I was a lot less nervous to have sex after my first child because I had a cesarean delivery. I was a lot more nervous to have sex after my second baby because it was a vaginal delivery. I was nervous to have sex after my C-section, but I knew that I hadn't really had anything going on down there in terms of the opening. So I felt a little bit more comfortable and I was a little less nervous. I still got on Google and read up all of the advice and tips for having sex first time postpartum after a cesarean. In my experience, it really wasn't any different. We waited almost 8 weeks, I think, before we had sex for the first time. Not gonna lie, after having your first baby, at least in my experience, I was ready to jump on my husband like shortly after I came home. And I think it was just the transition of like watching him become a father and just seeing him have emotions and this love that I had never witnessed before. I got to witness it, and it was just the most beautiful thing that I had ever seen. And he was more attractive to me, and I'm sure some of it was raging hormones, but like during that time, he was more attractive to me than I think I had ever experienced in my life. That's not to say that he's not still very attractive to me, but during that time, hormones were on fire. I was super attracted to him, and I'm sure some of it was the fact that we couldn't have sex or we shouldn't have sex. There was also that pull of, well, we can't have sex right now and that's all I want to do. So with my first baby, it was hard. When we came home, I was just watching him become a dad. I was so attracted to him. All I wanted to do was just jump his bones. But we waited because I'm a stickler for the rules, and I like to make sure that I follow them, and the rules were wait until your postpartum appointment to get the all clear. So I waited until we got the all clear, and then we ended up having sex. I feel like sex after the cesarean was totally normal. I don't feel like anything really changed, let's just say. Sex after my vaginal delivery was a different story. I also did not have the same sex drive that I had after my cesarean, and I don't know if that's because my husband was already a father. So I mean, obviously it was amazing and wonderful and so attractive to see him become a dad of two and to watch him be a dad to both of our little girls. But I definitely was like not in the mindset of I want to jump your bones quite as much the second time around. That could be because I also had a toddler that I was taking care of. So I had a toddler and a newborn who was breastfeeding, and a toddler who was hanging off of me, and just this overwhelm of exhaustion and emotions and feeling touched out. So I definitely the second time around did not have the same sex drive. And I think that's okay. I think that's normal. I think sometimes you go through these like ebbs and flows in your sex life where you feel like you want to have sex all the time, and then I feel like you go through this time where you don't feel it. And I think that's just a part of your relationship and like the season, like how the seasons of your relationship kind of change. So yeah, that's where I was at the second time around, not feeling as excited for sex. Now, I will say that I tore and I pushed my baby out vaginally. So the thought of something going in there after what came out of there was scary. I was scared. I was nervous. I was scared. I was nervous. I was worried. And I was also worried that things weren't going to feel the same for my husband. I was worried that things weren't going to feel the same for me. I was worried that it was going to be extremely painful. So there was just a lot of fears surrounding that first time postpartum. I will say, because I felt so much better, so much quicker after my vaginal delivery, we did have sex sooner than we did after my C-section. And we did have sex a week before my postpartum checkup appointment. So we kind of broke the rules, which again, I am usually a stickler for the rules, but part of it was I was just so nervous about it, and I just couldn't stop worrying about it, that I felt like we needed to do it just so that I would stop obsessing and worrying about it. Sex, the first time after my vaginal delivery, we went really slow and we used lube. And I totally recommend both of those things. I will say it wasn't the most comfortable after the vaginal delivery. I definitely felt more, I don't want to say pain, because it wasn't necessarily pain. It wasn't the same. It has changed from the first time. So like things are much better now, and I'm about 5 months postpartum now. Things are all healed, and there's no more pain down there, and there's no more pain or discomfort with sex. It was probably until around 2 or 3 months postpartum where sex was just uncomfortable, and we had to go slow and we had to use lube, and it was just not the most comfortable. But again, it got better and there is no more pain. So that is my advice to you, new mom, old moms, whatever, after having a baby, going for that first time having sex after baby. Take it slow. Make sure that you have that conversation too. Like my husband and I, we talked about it a lot before we actually had sex. We had a lot of conversation surrounding it, and he knew that I was worried, and so he made sure that we took it very slow. And that is my suggestion, is just take it slow, give it time. It does get better. I would love to hear your experience. It's so different for everybody, but that was my experience with sex for the first time after having babies. So with that, I think I'm going to wrap up this mom talk video and close off in saying that postpartum is hard. There are so many different facets to your postpartum recovery and healing mentally, healing emotionally, healing physically, and it really is a time that you need to just give yourself grace, be patient with yourself, and try your hardest to just love yourself and appreciate yourself, and know that your body just did an amazing thing by growing a human and then birthing said human. And then if you are breastfeeding, you are creating food to give that human the ability to grow, and all of those things are just absolutely amazing, incredible things. So just give yourself grace and give yourself love, and know that even though this time postpartum is hard, you are doing amazing, and you are the best mom that you could possibly be for your baby. That's gonna wrap up the first video in the Mom Talk series. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I know it's probably going to be a little bit on the lengthier side. I'm looking forward to putting together some more videos in this series. If you have any video suggestions or topics, conversations, things that you would like me to talk about, things that you would like to hear about, I would love feedback in my comment section, so don't be shy. Make sure you leave a comment. Let me know what you would like to see or hear. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any new videos. I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye.